Hi everyone, I'm really excited today to introduce our next read aloud story. And the book that I'm going to be reading to you for the next little while is called The Last of the Really Great Whangdoodles. It's a really silly title, but it's a wonderful book. And I am purposely not showing you the cover of the book because it has pictures of the characters inside. And I am a firm believer that you should be using your imagination when you are picturing what's going on in the story. So I'm not going to show you the cover of the book. You're going to have to just all the way through use your imagination to come up with what the characters look like. Now, you may be wondering who wrote this book. And the woman who wrote this book, her name is Julie Andrews Edwards, and she is the same Julie Andrews Edwards that is the main character in the Mary Poppins movie, the original. And she's also the main character in The Sound of Music. So I know that you're familiar with those movies, and you have seen her on TV. She is a very, very famous person. And she happens to not only be an actress, but she has written some children's books as well, and some autobiographies. So I hope you enjoy. I have been wanting to read The Last of the Really Great Whangdoodle book to you for years, and I haven't quite had the chance. I don't know, it's just never worked out. So I'm really excited for this opportunity to read to you this book. I was read this book by my second grade teacher when I was in school, and I've loved it ever since then. I think it's wacky, I think it's fun, and you might already be wondering what a Whangdoodle is, and I would like to challenge you to look it up in the dictionary, and maybe you'll get a hint as to why this book is called The Last of the Really Great Whangdoodles, or maybe you won't get a hint, but look the word Whangdoodle up in the dictionary. It's spelled W-H-A-N-G-D-O-O-D-L-E, and it is a real word. So there's a little challenge for you. I'm going to start reading now on chapter 1. And they're short chapters, so I might do a few a day or in a sitting. And so let's begin. Chapter 1. It was a crisp, sunny October afternoon, and Benjamin, Thomas, and Melinda Potter were visiting the Bramblewood Zoo. They hadn't particularly wanted to visit the zoo, but Mrs. Potter had been very firm about it. "Daddy has been working extremely hard," she had said. "I think he needs an afternoon of peace and quiet. Here's some money. I suggest you go to the zoo." There is no arguing with Mrs. Potter in this mood, so the three children had dutifully taken the bus from the stop at the corner of their street and had ridden through the pretty university town of Bramblewood as far as the zoo. Although it was the end of October and very cold, the sun was shining brightly from an unusually clear sky. Only a few clouds on the horizon gave a hint of possible rain. Late autumn leaves blew along the pavement and rolled in through the main gates of the zoo, as if inviting the children to follow. On this lovely Sunday, the place was crowded with visitors, and there were popcorn sellers, balloon vendors, and a man pushing a yellow cart piled high with toys. Children yelled happily as they scampered to the rides and to the animal cages. In spite of their early reluctance to venture out, Benjamin, Thomas, and Lindy had to admit, now that they were there, that the zoo didn't seem so bad after all. "I want to see the tigers," Tom announced. "I want to see the donkeys and the ducks," countered Lindy. "Donkeys and ducks," Tom scoffed. "Anyone can see a donkey or a duck, and you don't have to go to the zoo for it. That's just a waste of time." I know, Lindy replied. "I just feel like seeing a donkey and a duck today. I don't know why." "Oh, look, if we're going to spend the afternoon trailing around looking at animals like that—" "Well, we're not," Benjamin interrupted firmly. He was used to his younger siblings squabbling with each other. "We're going to see the elephants first, because I'm the oldest and I'm in charge. Come on." The children visited the elephants, and then the lions and tigers. They slowly moved on to the llamas and leopards and the rhinos and reindeer, crocodiles and hippopotamuses and brown bears and the polar bears. They watched the performing seals, and Lindy saw 3 ducks and 12 penguins, which made her very happy. Tom suggested that they visit the aquarium. They wandered through the dim corridors whose only light came from the many illuminated tanks in which turtles, sharks, eels, and other underwater creatures were to be seen. It was gloomy and damp inside, and Lindy was very glad when Ben chose to go to the reptile house. Oh, but she clung tightly to his hand as he gazed at the cobras and the rattlesnakes and a giant python. "I'd love one of those for a pet," Tom said enthusiastically. "Ugh, I think they're gross. Really gross," Lindy exclaimed. "You just say that because you're scared of them." "No, I don't. They're not my favorite things, but I am not scared." "Then why are you sucking your thumb?" "I like the taste." "Cut it out, you two," said Ben. "What shall we do next?" Lindy announced that she was tired, cold, and extremely hungry. The children bought a bag of delicious, sticky-looking donuts and 3 cups of hot, sugary chocolate. Carefully, they carried the steaming mugs to a bench that caught the late afternoon sunshine, and which was close to a fenced yard containing 2 large, disdainful-looking giraffes. Lindy had no sooner sat down than one of the giraffes spotted the donut she had in her hand and immediately set upon her sorry, I lost my spot for a second. And immediately undulated towards her on spindly legs, looking as though his knobby knees would buckle underneath him at any moment. The animal lifted his long neck over the wire netting and brought his face to inches within Lindy's, just as she was about to take a large mouthful of her donut. The giraffe and the child gazed at each other with serious concentration for a moment, and then Lindy said solemnly, "No," and moved herself and her donut farther along the bench out of the giraffe's way. "That's really an extraordinary animal," mused Ben as he watched. "Imagine being born with a long neck like that. Imagine being able to reach the tops of the trees quite easily." "I'd like that," said Tom. "You could see the world from up there." "I like giraffes a lot," Lindy spoke with her mouth full. "If you could have any animal out of the zoo to take home, which one would you want to do that with?" Ben suddenly asked. "The python," Tom spoke without hesitation. "Gross," said Lindy. "I'd have a penguin. What would you have, Ben?" I don't know." Ben thought about it as he sipped his hot chocolate. "I'd like something unusual. An orangutan, perhaps, or an anteater, maybe a gorilla." "You'll excuse my butting in," said a voice immediately behind the children, "but if you're looking for something really unusual, have you ever considered a Whangdoodle?" The children spun around. Sitting on the grass behind them, his knees drawn up almost to his chin, was a man. A small man. He was holding a rolled umbrella that was made out of clear plastic. "I beg your pardon, sir," Ben said. "Did you say something?" "Yes, I did. I said, have you ever considered a Whangdoodle?" The little man got up slowly. He had a round, cheerful face with bright blue, sparkling eyes, and the few hairs that were still growing on his balding head were long and gray and flying in all directions. He wore an old brown sports jacket that had a blue checkered shirt with a purple, yellow-spotted scarf tied in a casual bow. He had shabby brown trousers and old but highly polished shoes. What a guy. Ben said, "Excuse me, but I don't think I've ever heard of a Whangdoodle, sir." The remarkable-looking gentleman smiled, leaned on his umbrella, and crossed one small foot over the other. "That's That's not surprising. It's an extremely rare creature. In fact, I believe that there's only one left in the whole world. Well, what does it look like? Tom asked. Well now, I've not actually seen the Whangdoodle myself, countered the stranger, although I do hope to one day. Then how do you know about it? Lindy wanted to know. Ah, that is a long, complicated story, he replied. Here we are chatting away, and I don't even know your names. Tom tugged at Ben's sleeve. He was suspicious of the stranger and wanted to warn Ben that they should be leaving immediately and heading for home. But Lindy was already cheerfully giving out information. My name is Melinda Potter. Everyone calls me Lindy. How old are you, Lindy? I shall be 8 on December 3rd. Which means she's 7, growled Tom. Ah, but of course. The stranger turned to him. And how old are you, young man? 10. My name is Thomas Potter. And I'm Benjamin Potter, Ben offered. I'm 13. What about you? What's your name? Tom wanted to know. The stranger placed a hand on his forehead. Oh, goodness me! What is my name? It seems to have escaped me for the moment. Lindy giggled. Tom nudged Ben hard and jerked his hand as if to say, Let's get out of here. But it's really of no importance, continued the man. What is important is that this is a most pleasant afternoon, and if I'm not mistaken, it is only 2 days before Halloween, is it not? Lindy gave a little hop of excitement. Do you know what I'm going to be when we go trick-or-treating? She asked. Let me see if I can guess. He looked thoughtful. Snow White? Possibly Cinderella? No, I'm going to be a lion, she said proudly. Oh, a very ferocious one, I'm sure you'll be. What about you, Thomas? What are you going to be? I'm going to be the Hunchback of Notre Dame. And you, Benjamin? I haven't quite decided yet. I don't know whether to be Dracula or Frankenstein. Well, I just hope not to bump into any of you in the dark. I think I would be very scared, said the man. Maybe I'll change my mind and go as a Whangdoodle, Lily said brightly. The little man chuckled. Ha ha, that's a good idea. You know, I don't think there is such an animal, Tom blurted out. Ben actually thought so too, though he was too polite to say so. I assure you that the Whangdoodle exists, said the man. Look it up in your dictionary when you get home. What does it look like? Asked Lindy. That's sort of hard to describe. It's a little like a moose, or a horse, perhaps, but with fantastic horns. And I believe it has rather short legs. Where does it live? Inquired Tom. Oh, far, far away, which is a good thing, for if it were here, it would be in a cage, like all these other poor animals. I do so hate to see things in cages, don't you? Then why do you come to the zoo if you don't like it? Said Lindy with her usual candor. I come to study the animals. I prefer to study them from their natural environment, but I just haven't got the time. Ben suddenly remembered to look at his watch. Gosh, we're late. You'll have to excuse us, sir, but we have to go now or we're going to miss the bus. The little man took a large watch from his pocket. Yes, it is late, he said, and we'd better hurry, because it's going to rain. He unfurled his umbrella with a flourish and opened it above his head. Large yellow butterflies were painted all over the clear plastic. Allow me to escort you, he said, and walked briskly towards the front gate of the zoo. Lindy fell into step behind him. I love your umbrella, she said admiringly. I brought it because it's cheery, and it makes people look up. Have you ever noticed how nobody ever looks up? The man's voice was suddenly irritable. Nobody looks at chimneys or trees against the sky or the tops of buildings. Everybody just looks down at their pavement and the shoes. The whole world could pass them by, and most people wouldn't notice. Ben and Tom discovered that they were looking at the pavement as he spoke, Quickly, they lifted their heads up to the sky, only to get wet faces, for it was beginning to rain. They also bumped straight into Lindy and her escort, who had come to a sudden halt. "This is where the bus stops, isn't it?" asked the stranger. "Ah, here comes one now. Very good timing. I hate to waste time, don't you?" Visitors from the zoo were running for the bus or for their cars. Umbrellas seemed to be popping up everywhere. People who didn't have an umbrella went scurrying by with newspapers on their heads or their coats bundled up tight. "You see what I mean?" said the man. "None of them look up. Ever." He helped the children onto the bus. "It's been a great pleasure meeting you all. A most happy afternoon." He waved a red handkerchief as the bus pulled away from the curb. "Goodbye, goodbye," he called after them. There was a sudden, terrifying sound of rubber tires skidding to a stop and the blaring sound of a car horn. Tom and Ben and Lindy turned quickly in their seats and looked out the back window of the bus. The little man was standing in the middle of the street apologizing to a taxi driver who had nearly run him over. "I bet he was looking up," grinned Ben. The bus turned a corner and the scene disappeared from their view. I'm going to stop there today, and I'm going to let you all have a chance to look up Whangdoodle in the dictionary. And I'll catch you next time.